I have such fond memories of my first year of teaching, but would I want to go back there? Absolutely not. Today, I want to share some advice for first-time teachers. Hi, my name is Megan. I have been an ESL teacher for the past 10 years. Welcome to Teacher Talk, where we just sit with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and chat about all things teaching. Today, I am using my mahjong cup. I got it when we were traveling in Wuhan not too long ago. I think he's so cute. But today, I want to share some advice that I would give myself if I could go back and talk to my first year self that might be helpful for first-time teachers. I am an ESL teacher, but actually, I think these tips would work for any type of subject that you're teaching. Your first year of teaching is going to be hard. There's no way around it, but I wish I had known these 8 things my first year of teaching. It just would have helped me so much. My first tip is to view everything as an experiment. And actually, this is something I did during my first year of teaching, but I wish I had known to do it right from the beginning. Your first class is not going to go well. Your second class is not going to go well. Your third class is not going to go well. And when you're faced with bad classes, you can either just shrug them off and forget they ever happened, or you can try to analyze them and try to learn from them. So my first year of teaching, I really viewed each individual class as an experiment. I would walk into class thinking, okay, this is my chance to gather data, to gather information about what works and what doesn't work. And I actually had a little notebook that I would carry with me. And at the end of every class, I would really quickly jot down what worked and what didn't. And I would try to readjust for the next day. By the end of the week, I had a collection of things that seemed to work and things that seemed to not work. And what I would do is I would just try to adjust as we went along, or I would try different things. I would try this review game, and for the next class, I would try this review game and try to see which one worked better. Or I would explain an exercise this way and explain it a different way and try to see which one worked better. If you can view each of your classes as just a chance to gather more information, to gather data about what works and what doesn't, it will really help you navigate and identify what works early on. And from a mental perspective, this also helps so much because it's so easy to get discouraged after you have a really bad class. But if you just view it as a learning experience, it really helps. The second piece of advice I would give first-time teachers is just to focus on the students. During your first year, there is so much to think about and so much distracting you and so much pulling from your energy. You have new coworkers, you're figuring out how to lesson plan, you're figuring out the school setup and where everything is, you're figuring out who to go to when you need permission or you need help, you're figuring out how copiers work, you're figuring out everything. There's so much going on that it can be really easy to forget the students. And they're the whole reason that we are there. So if you can just keep your focus on the students, this really helps so much. It helps focus your energy. It helps you prioritize. And it also helps you when things get a little bit tough, because if the class didn't go well, but the students still learned something or they still walked away with something, then that really is the success. Maybe the class didn't go as well as you wanted in your mind. Maybe there were all these other things you wanted to discuss, but the students don't know everything that's on your agenda. All the students know is what happens in that classroom. And so if they're having a good experience and if they're actually learning something, then for them, that's a win. And during your first year of teaching, that can be a win for you as well. There were so many days during my first year of teaching that I would feel overwhelmed, panicked, flat out afraid to go to class. I had the worst case of Sunday scaries. I hated Sunday night because I truly never felt prepared for Monday morning. I always felt nervous and worried about how classes would go. And instead of focusing on being worried about my lesson, if I was able to reprogram my thoughts just before I went into the classroom with things like, I'm so excited to see these students, I'm so excited to talk with these students, I'm excited to get to know these students better, it really helped so much in reframing my perspective and helping me focus on the positive parts about teaching, which, let's face it, the students are always going to be that big motivation for teachers. My third piece of advice is a little bit connected to that reframing of your focus, and that is to have a clear goal or a focus for the semester that you are teaching. You are going to make mistakes in your first year of teaching. You are going to create lessons that, looking back, are going to be so awful. At least that was my experience. But when you have a clear focus or a clear goal, it really helps you even if the class didn't go that well. I did not do this my first semester of teaching, but I did do it during my second semester of teaching, and it helped me so much. My goal for my second semester of teaching was that the students enjoy learning English. I just wanted them to have a good time and enjoy their experience learning English. Very quickly, I found out that my students were really discouraged or not motivated when it came to learning English, and so that was my focus for the second semester. And what ended up happening was, if I had a bad class, if I didn't have my classroom management on point, or I didn't explain a vocabulary word very well, instead of just beating myself up about it, I viewed everything as an experiment and I figured out how to do it better next time. But I walked away from the class thinking, did they enjoy learning English today? Did they enjoy the class? And most of the time, even if it wasn't up to my standard and I didn't think I did everything perfectly, the students enjoyed their time learning English, and so the class ended up being a win. You might notice a lot of these are like restructuring your perspective and your focus, because that really is so important during your first year of teaching. Teaching can be tough, and it can be difficult, and it can be discouraging, but keeping your focus in the right place really helps so much with encouraging you to be a constant learner and encouraging yourself to stay motivated. Now, switching a little bit from mindset, if we want to go super practical, this might be the most practical tip I could ever have given myself my first year of teaching, and that is just to prepare more material. I so many times found myself nearing the end of class with like 5 or 10 minutes before the bell would ring, and I had run out of stuff to teach, and I had run out of activities, and I didn't know what to do, and I was scrambling. And let me tell you, there's nothing more stressful than having 10 minutes on the clock and you don't know what to do. So I would just tell myself to prepare more material than you actually need, and this is a habit that I still continue today. If you were to look at my lesson plans and my PowerPoints today, I always have 1 or 2 exercises that I never get to, because I just want to make sure, even if students whiz through the material really quickly, if something happens with the computer and I'm not able to complete one assignment, we have backup exercises ready to go. I do have a couple of ideas for like filler activities on the website, atlasteachingesl.com, but you can pull a lot of things out. One thing I love to do is just have a little review game. You can use that for any subject and just tack it on to the end of the class. For ESL specifically, you could have a conversation question, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be about the topic, but you could just give students a conversation question and have them talk with each other to help fill the class time. But definitely making sure that you have enough material and extra material is such a lifesaver. For tip number 5, I would really consider your homework assignments and your task assignments from the perspective of how much work is this for me? We often think about students when we're planning projects or homework assignments or exam topics, but during your first year of teaching, also think about this for yourself as well, because during your first year of teaching, you are going to be so busy. There's so much to learn. Like I said, there's new paperwork, there are new coworkers, you're figuring out lesson planning, you're figuring out classroom management. There's so much to do. The last thing you want to do is add unnecessary work onto your plate. And so what I mean by this is just consider carefully how much work and how much time it's going to take you to check homework, to check papers, to grade exams, and make the decision that's going to be right for you during that first year. I'm not telling you to be lazy, but I am saying that during your first year of teaching, you have a lot going on. So maybe choosing some simpler assignments that make it easier for you to grade would help you out in the long run. Let me give you an example. So just last week or a few weeks ago, we talked about interviews in class. And one of the homework assignments that I love to do for that is I have students write out their answers to 3 interview questions. For example, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And I have them write this out, and then I give them feedback on it. And I tell them that this wasn't the best answer. They can improve it this way. I check their grammar. I check their vocabulary. That is a lot of work. It's a lot of work for me to go through each student and read all of their answers and give them all the feedback. Another homework alternative might have been write down 10 adjectives you could use to describe yourself in an interview. For example, I'm detail-oriented, I'm patient, I'm dedicated. That homework assignment is so much easier, faster, for me to grade. So during your first year of teaching, really consider the homework assignments that you're giving out. I'm not saying be lazy. I'm not saying choose homework assignments that are not good for the students. But during your first year, you have so much going on. Don't give yourself unnecessary work. Tip number 6 is a really common one. This is one that everyone had told me, and that is to ask for help. But I want to add a caveat to that, because when I heard people say ask for help, I would ask for help, and people would give me their advice about what I should do. But I would change this advice to be ask for help, but also understand what your style of teaching is and what works for you. Because I would be getting advice from other seasoned, experienced teachers, and they were adamant about their ideas. They said, oh, you should absolutely do this, you should do this, you should do this. And I would try it, and sometimes it would work and sometimes it didn't work. And what took me a few years to figure out is that every teacher is a little bit different. We have our own style of teaching, and we have our own focus and our own goals. And so what works so well for this teacher might not work that well for you. What works really well in their classroom might not work really well in your classroom. So definitely ask for help. Don't try to do it on your own. Go online, talk to other teachers at your school. But at the same time, keep in mind that what worked for them works for them, and it might not necessarily work for you in the exact same way. You might need to modify it, or you might need to try something totally different. Tip number 7, which is also kind of connected to the other advice I got, is don't try to micromanage everything. When I first became a teacher, so much of the advice that I was given, and even in my education classes, was about control. Controlling the students, controlling the time, controlling everything. And I really found out that if you try to micromanage everything your first year of teaching, you'll go crazy because you don't know what you're doing. And if you try to micromanage everything, you'll just end up frustrated and confused yourself. I really find that micromanaging and controlling the classroom comes with more and more experience. You have to know when to let things go and when to double down on things. Let me give you an example. When I mean don't micromanage, maybe that means don't micromanage the timing of things. I was told to always give students really set times. You have 2 minutes to talk to your partner. You have 5 minutes to complete the exercise. You have 4 minutes to write down the vocabulary words. And what I found is that it really stressed me out because I was constantly like checking my watch, checking the time. We have 30 more seconds, we have 20 more seconds. But also I found that it put all of these limitations onto the lessons. So I would give students 5 minutes to discuss something, and after 4 minutes, they all kind of seemed to run out of things to say. And I would force them to talk for 1 more minute because I had told them they have to talk for 5 minutes. And it led to a lot of awkward moments and me like not knowing how to force the students to talk for 1 more minute. On the other hand, if I gave students 5 minutes to discuss, and at the end of 5 minutes, they were all still really discussing the topic and really enjoying it, they still had so many things to say, I was cutting them off so we could move on to the next thing, because in my lesson plan, I had timed everything perfectly. 2 minutes here, 5 minutes here, 7 minutes here, and I didn't want to get it off schedule. So for me, having such strict times was actually a limitation. And now today, I usually just say, talk to your partner, or I will give you a few minutes to talk to your partner, because I mean, the the students don't actually care how long they're talking. Students don't really pay attention to the difference between 3 minutes and 4 minutes. Unless we're talking about an exam, but students really don't pay attention to that. Another example of this is classroom behavior. I was told to be super strict with students. Don't ever let them talk to their classmate or use their phones. If you see one student whisper to her classmate, call her out, tell her that she's not allowed to be talking. And I've found that you get much better at this as time goes on and as you have more experience. If a student whispers to her classmate, yeah, maybe she did say, "What do you want to eat for lunch?" But maybe she was asking for clarification. Maybe she was saying, "What did the teacher just say? What page are we on?" All of those things are possible as well. And if you try to micromanage each individual student in your class during your first year of teaching, you'll find that it can kind of drive you crazy a little bit. So learn that teaching is not a science. Teaching is also an art, and you have to be a little bit flexible. Different classes need different things. Different students need different things. They need it to be explained in different ways. Some students have so much energy and they need a little bit more room to breathe compared to other students. So don't try to micromanage everything. Go with the flow a little bit more. And finally, my last piece of advice is just to know that it's going to be hard, but it's just a year. During my first year of teaching, I wondered so many times, is this the job for me? Do I know what I'm doing? I feel like a failure. I'll never improve. I'll never learn. It's tough. The first year is difficult, but it is only a year and you are going to get so much better. You're going to see so much improvement from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. You are going to see so much improvement from year number 1 to year number 2. And by year number 1 to year number 3, it's unrecognizable. You really are going to learn so much during your first year of teaching. So just go into it knowing that it's going to be hard. Know that your education is not going to prepare you the way that you think it is. There is something different about learning teaching inside the classroom when you were a student, and it's a whole different ballgame when you are actually the teacher in charge of a classroom. Just know that it will be difficult going into it, but it's just a year. You can do anything for a year. You can definitely make it through your first year. And I wish I had that mentality. Instead, every week, every Friday, I would think, I don't know what I'm doing. This is not the job for me. This is not the career for me. This is a nightmare. And I would think that every Friday. And instead of thinking that, I wish I had just thought, okay, that was a week. I learned a lot. I made a lot of mistakes, but I learned a lot. And that means next week, I'm going to be so much better. And just imagine next year at this time, I will have improved so much. Focus on your progress, focus on your growth, rather than focusing on how much more there is to learn. You'll get there. So those are my 8 tips, the things that I would tell first-time teachers. If it is your first time teaching, congratulations. I mean, if you really want to be a teacher, there is no other career like it. You are about to end up on a wild ride. If you're in the middle of your first year of teaching, you're gonna be great. It's going to be fine. You are learning so much. You are growing into the teacher that you are going to be. And if you are an experienced teacher, maybe leave some advice in the comments down below for other people. And if you're an experienced teacher, maybe this was a nice little trip down memory lane about how far you've come. If you want more tips and tricks, information, inspiration, you can check out the website atlasteachingesl.com. If you ever have questions about ESL teaching or teaching in general, you can always leave them in the comments, send me a message on Instagram at atlasteaching, whatever is fine. You can also check back here for weekly videos. That's all for today. Thank you for joining me. Bye.